Okay, so now we're going to put on a handle. We're going to create a pulled handle, and then we're gonna attach it. So we're gonna have to walk over to the sink for a minute, but I wanna make sure that we're set up for success. So number one, I have a toolbox. It's got all the tools I need. It has some vinegar, and then I need a damp, large sponge that's clean, and a banding wheel. My clay piece has been trimmed, and I'm at the table and I wanna check to make sure that it's flat. If there's any high points on the vessel at all, you wanna make sure that you clean it off. So using the canvas, if there is a little bit of a high point, I can use some water and make a slurry, and it pulls away the high points, and now it does not rock at all. And then I can just use my sponge and my finger to clean up the bottom so that you don't see the canvas texture. So I'm gonna leave this piece here, and we're going to walk over to the sink so that we can make a handle. So I have clay off the block, and it doesn't matter if it's more of a square or more of a rectangle, but I'm going to extend it so that it becomes more of a rectangle with a handle. So I'm gonna end up holding from the top, and I'm going to make the handle from this bottom area. The reason we have all this extra is because if you break off the handle, you have more clay that you can pull from. I would strongly encourage you to do this over the sink because it does make kind of a mess. And if your clay does break off, you need to grab it out of the sink and get rid of the scraps. So let's go over to the sink. Okay, so I'm gonna hold the clay, and the only area that I'm going to use for creating the handle are going to be my index finger and my thumb. So I wet my hand, and I'm just gonna use my index finger and my thumb, and I'm gonna keep changing direction so that I can create my handle. But you can see that it's only this part of my hand. I'm not squeezing the clay. If I squeeze too hard, I'm gonna break the clay off. Right? So if I make a stress point like this, eventually that clay is gonna come off. So that's what I'm talking about. If you end up breaking the clay, clean up your scraps. So by holding my left hand over the top, I'm not lazy down here. I'm using gravity to help me to make my handle. So depending on what you're putting your handle on, you're gonna wanna change the direction of your hand so that you can thin out the handle. Since this is gonna go on like a large teacup, I'm gonna keep my handle somewhat wide and long enough. And I kind of like let off pressure at the end so that it's a little bit thicker. I know I'm gonna cut that off eventually. If I want it to be longer, I can grab up higher and pull down on that clay. So that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to take this clay and I'm just turning the whole block, and I can attach it onto itself so it can start to dry. The difference with using a pulled handle technique versus the handle making tool is that I've added a lot of moisture. So this handle is very wet. So I have to give this a chance to firm up and become slightly more leather hard so it will hold its shape. But the nice thing is that you can use the clay to help it hold its own shape. So we're gonna take this back over to the table. So I would encourage you, if you're going to pull a handle, to pull the handle, then go trim, then come back and attach it. For ease of this video, I'm going to attach it now. Okay, so I have my banding wheel, I have my trimmed vessel, and I like to pull the trimmed vessel towards the edge of the banding wheel, and I'm going to look, what area do I like the least? And that's where I'm gonna attach my handle. So I'm gonna go ahead and attach the handle on this side. I'm gonna use this fettling knife so that I can cut the handle. And just like we've talked about with handles that we make using the handle making tool, you want to have a good amount of surface area for connection. If you connect straight on for your handle, it's going to break. And if you connect with both ends pointing out, it looks more like an inchworm. So you want to make sure that the top edge is pointed down, and then you can decide if you want the bottom edge to be pointed down or if you want the bottom edge to be pointed in. So here's the two examples. Top edge is down, bottom edge is down. Top edge is down, bottom edge is up. You just need enough surface area so that it will support the weight of the cup. So for this handle, I'm going to cut it with that extra clay so that it has enough surface area. So if this is going to be my handle, when I cut, I'm going to cut straight down so I have some extra to help hold it in place. So once I've cut the handle, I'm not going to unbend it. And I have a very clean hand. I'm going to drape this handle over my left hand, so my non-dominant hand, and this is where I'm going to connect. So I'm going to take my textured rib, or you can use a needle tool for working on my connections, and my vinegar. So the first thing I like to do is touch this with vinegar and touch it to my vessel so that I have an idea of where I need to score. So I'm just gonna touch this onto here and pull it away. So now I can see where I need to score my clay. You wanna score in 2 different directions. And now I'm gonna score my handle. I'm only dealing with the top first. I'm gonna go back and add a little bit more vinegar. And now with a clean right hand, I'm gonna have my thumb outside the handle, my fingertips inside my cup, and I'm gonna squeeze them both together. By squeezing them both together, I'm gonna help space out the clay and give structure to my handle. And I'm not gonna let this hang. Okay, I'm holding the weight of the clay right now, and before I even address any other part of this handle, I'm gonna lift it and turn. So now gravity is helping me by holding it in place. So I'm gonna take a look, and I can cut the extra, and I have not connected the top yet, but I'm just looking to see how I want this handle to connect. And I'm gonna connect it right above my trimmed foot. So I'm gonna pull it away, score, making sure that it's straight. And I'm gonna use my fettling knife to score the inside of my handle. I got a little vinegar, and notice I'm keeping my hand really clean. And now before I connect, I'm just making sure that it's straight, and then I push. I like using my finger to make a little indent because it's the sign of the artist, right? I'm making the cup. So I don't see any reason why I should make my imprint go away. So now using a smudge stick, I'm gonna go around and clean everything up. None of this clay melts away. It doesn't burn off. So if you leave crumbs, those crumbs are gonna be there when it comes out of the kiln. Some people like to blend this all the way into the vessel. Some people like to leave a distinct line. It's personal preference. As long as it's fully connected, that's my biggest concern because I don't want it to crack when it goes into the kiln. So now if I just go back and clean up my fingerprints a little bit more, that shape of that handle looks pretty good. It mimics the shape of my vessel. I can gently press it if I want it to be slightly wider and slightly lower, but it's really secured into place. And as long as it's signed, it will hold its shape and it will be a great cup of tea.